AI. That is the topic on everybody's mind. If it's not on your mind yet, it should be. And I can't wait to talk to today's guest.
Welcome to All About Capital Campaigns, a podcast that provides fuel for your nonprofit's growth. Each week, Amy Eisenstein and Andrea Kilstead, co-founders of Capital Campaign Pro, provide practical tips about raising more money for your nonprofit organization. Here are your hosts, Amy and Andrea.
Hi, I'm Amy Eisenstein, CEO and co-founder of Capital Campaign Pro. My co-host, Andrea, is taking today off, but I am so excited to be talking to Alonda Williams. Alonda is currently the president and CEO of Big Brothers Big Sisters of Puget Sound, the largest and oldest mentoring organization in Washington state. As CEO, she redefines mentoring to empower youth and communities. A TEDx speaker and best-selling author, she inspires audiences with insights on leadership, mentorship, and leveraging technology for impact. She is a self-proclaimed AI enthusiast, and early adopter, and I couldn't agree more. Outside of her work, Alonda has created a personal platform around empowering girls. Her publishing company and books are designed to uplift and amplify stories that empower women and girls, and I encourage you to go to Amazon to check out her books and also to find her on LinkedIn, which we'll talk about more at the end of the episode. But I am confident that your mind is going to be blown today when we talk about AI. I am so excited. I first saw you, Alonda. Well, first of all, welcome to the program. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
I first encountered you at an International Association of Fundraising Professionals conference that we had this past spring, and I was really blown away by your session. So I'm super excited to have you here talking about AI and technology and how you use it at work and with your team. So why don't you first tell us a little bit, just give us an overview of how you think about AI, how you approach technology, and how it's impacted your work and your life. I know that's a big ask at the beginning, but wherever you want to start, we'll start there.
Sure. Well, first I'll start by saying I'm not a typical nonprofit leader in that I spent a lot of my early years in technology. So my, beginning career and pretty much until the last, I would say, decade, 6 years or so, I worked in technology. I actually worked for Microsoft, Qualcomm, Verizon. I worked for technology companies, and I made a shift to nonprofit after working in those industries. And that background is really what fuels my interest and quick adoption of technology and AI in particular. So that's a little bit of background. The way I think about it is that, I believe technology is a tool that helps us improve productivity. But in nonprofit, I think it's an amplifier. It allows us to scale. What I've learned, again, working in both for-profit and nonprofit, is that the resource structure is very different. In large corporations, I had lots of resources at my disposal, probably more than I needed. In nonprofit, we always have less.
Yes.
Always. I don't know that I've met a nonprofit leader that has exactly what they need or more.
Right.
And so what I'm excited about with AI in particular is that the accessibility it's open to everyone, and it levels the playing field, in my opinion, between for-profit companies and nonprofit companies. I remember having to get, the lower version of Microsoft Office or the, nonprofit edition of Salesforce or these other versions, lower feature versions, or that were what the company could afford to give a nonprofit discount for. Or, there were some, enterprise grade tools that we would get access to. But I just will say that with AI, that's not the case. It is the same across. We have access to the same tools that large companies do, and we can use it and in ways that are limitless. So I look at it as a way to increase our ability to impact the communities that we serve, just to scale our impact. So that's how I approach it. That's how when I use it and think about ways to use it, it's not about novelty. It's about what can help me be a more effective leader and what can help our organization increase our impact. And I believe that if you're not doing it, you're going backwards.
I so appreciate that perspective, and your background, makes so much sense, because I think that in general, nonprofit leaders, I'm going to totally stereotype here, are late adopters. They're not early adopters, but that background in the tech sector gives you such an advantage. And I'm just thrilled that you're going to share it with our audience today. So I had so many good takeaways from your session at the AFP conference, but I want to start with how you empower staff to use AI and how you encourage them to use AI and technology. Tell us a little bit about how you think about using it with your team.
So, number one, I think it comes from the top. So, as a leader, I make it okay by the fact that I use it and share how I use it with my team. So, that's number one. But number two, I encourage them to use it, again, because of the productivity and the way that, as I said, it helps us to increase our ability to impact the communities that we serve. But also, I think there's this other piece that I feel really passionate about, which is, employees aren't going to be with us forever. And I want to make sure that when they leave, and I feel very happy about the fact that most people that I've worked with that leave the organization, they go on someplace else to make more money and do bigger and better things. And I want that for all of my staff. So I don't want them to be behind. If they do leave, I want them to go with the advantage of knowing how to use AI. I have a job description, a job posting open now for a marketing manager. It is in the job description that I want someone who is familiar with AI and has used it to improve productivity, ideally. That's in the nice to haves, but it's on a job description. That's how passionately I feel about it. So as I said, encourage them to use it. I share what I use. And we also have in our team, we have a Teams chat that is all about how people are using Copilot. We bring in trainers. So we have some of the Microsoft skilling team. They have done workshops with our whole team to tell everyone how to, just basically help them increase their skill level. And then in our team meetings, we have a time where people share what they're doing and how they're using it. And it has been a game changer. I will also say there are some staff members who, for a variety of reasons, are less comfortable. So by sharing it, it helps other people get more comfortable with it. They see
Yeah.
their peers are using it to do the same job. And I also believe at some point it's going to allow people to perform at a different level. And those who aren't using it are going to wonder, how is it that they're doing twice the work that I'm doing and I'm still behind? That, they're going to want to learn as well.
Yeah, I love that. I love the idea of sharing at team meetings. And it's not just what works, it's what doesn't work. Are you encouraging success and failures and lessons learned?
Yes, I think there've been a lot of lessons learned, but honestly, I'll say there's been so yes, we do share things that didn't go well, or there are people who are still a little bit like uncomfortable, and they might say, "Well, I'm uncomfortable with what that does, or that's too scary for me." But we still share it. We still share the information and still make it safe. I think the key is making it safe for people to use it. Now, you need to have policies of like PII and making sure that you're using enterprise grade applications. So we pay for Copilot for staff members so that they have access to something that is protected. We have policies around what kind of information is shared and what isn't. But for the most part, we share the successes and the failures and the tips and tricks on how to be better at it. So yeah, I think that it's helped to increase adoption across the organization.
Yeah. All right. So one of the things you mentioned and that I heard in your talk is how you use it to help you stay organized, to be a better leader, to streamline, prioritize, save time. So talk about 2 or 3 of your favorite tools.
Yes.
And what you're
So
using them for, right? Your favorite
for
tools
sure.
and what you're using them for.
I'll say my favorite use case, and there are multiple tools that do this that I do use, is meetings. I'm in meetings all the time. And sometimes, at the end of what I used to do is I would take my notes, and then at the end of the day, or if I'm back to back, you'd have to do this at the end of the day, sort of recap. Okay, what are all the actions I have? I had a whole bunch of things I was supposed to do. I want to make sure I don't forget anything. That was pre AI. Now I have basically an AI assistant that goes to all of my meetings. Outside of Microsoft Teams, I use a tool called Sembly. And there are lots now, but Sembly was one of the first. And I just have been a loyal Sembly user since it came out in 2023, early 2023. And it just goes to all my meetings. It summarizes the meetings and creates action steps and a recap. So at the end of the meeting, I can just see, oh, these are the action steps that I need to take. I don't have to wait to the end of the day to remember what it was. I don't have to take the notes. Notes are taken. Inside of Teams, Copilot does that quite effectively. It summarizes the action step. In addition to recording the meeting, it gives you who does what. And within Copilot, it can actually identify the people and assign the action item to them, which is amazing. So those two things, I mean, it saved me not only time at the end of the day, but also I would forget things. I'm not, I'm human. So there are things that I would forget and somebody would have to remind me, oh, remember we met and you said you were going to do this. Oh, okay, great. Thank you. That doesn't happen. So that's my favorite use case and those are my favorite tools.
And these are online meetings. These are not in-person meetings that are somehow capturing the recording, right? I just want to clarify,
That's right.
just in case everybody's, in their conference rooms, but these are for remote meetings or virtual
These are
meetings.
for virtual meetings. However, Assembly does have a feature that allows you to turn it on in an in-person meeting, and it can capture the meeting in person. If you just turn your phone on and just put the microphone on, just tell someone, I'm recording this meeting, and that way you can get the same benefit from an in-person meeting. I do that less often because I can take notes but it's certainly fewer notes taking than I have than before.
For sure, for sure. Okay, I love that. Let's talk about how you moved from staff making matches for bigs and littles to using AI, because I love that story. So start it from start to finish and how you brought along hesitant staff.
For sure. Let me just say one thing too. There are lots of other tools that I use. I would say I am an AI powered CEO. So there are a lot of ways I use Copilot, ChatGPT, and I'll just say one thing before we go on to that story, and that is with Copilot, this is one of the things that I use to save myself lots of time, and that is I said, please look at the last month and summarize key points for my board report. So it looked at all of my team chats, all of my emails, all of my meeting notes, and my calendar, and summarized all of the things that could be good candidates for me to include in my board report. So rather than me having to go through that work, because I do that every month, I'll go through and I'll write notes throughout the month, but this summarized it all and it was spot on. So I just had to do some editing and I was ready for my board update. And it was fantastic. So that is something that, amazing.
For people listening, my jaw is on the floor. You had it summarize a month's worth of content for your board report.
And it had the number of emails and the number of teams. It was in the thousands. Because if you're like me, you're busy, you have the thousands that it summarized in a matter of minutes. It was incredible.
And it was accurate. I mean, I'm not suggesting that you didn't have to edit it and refine it.
I had to edit it.
But instead of spending hours and hours on this board report, you spent how much time?
I would say throughout the week, I would normally spend about 5 hours pulling everything, reviewing other meeting, pulling out the pertinent things, summarizing it, a day here, a day there, a day here. And then at the end of the week, editing and getting it ready. I spent an hour.
Incredible. I mean, honestly, isn't that what it's all about? I mean, that highlights how valuable this is for nonprofits that are chronically understaffed, under-resourced, the number one issue I hear from development directors, CEOs, executive directors is I don't have time. And so what AI does when it works well is gives you back time. And to me,
Absolutely.
that's what's magical in all of these tools.
Absolutely. Okay, so now I'll go back to my so I at the conference I was sharing how I when I started my role, I met with I was at an event actually, and I met a mom whose son was on our wait list. And this mom was telling me about how worried she was about her son. She didn't know what to do. She signed him up for our program, but he had been on our wait list. And it broke my heart because she was exacerbated. She just like, I wasn't sure what to do. He was on the wait list. And my husband happened to be with me at this event. And she turned to my husband because she was an African American woman with her son Miles, and my husband was there, and she said, "Could you be my son's big?" And again, I was fairly new, so he hadn't quite signed up for the program. He is now, but at the time, he was shocked and just, he looked at me, and I was just, my heart hurt for her because I thought in that moment she turned to us, and she's waiting. Her son is waiting. So I made it really a priority to figure out our wait list. So I took that information into sort of my next year or so. Now we're talking about AI. And I was actually presenting at a conference, and I started thinking, how could we use this in our mission, like in our work? And so we partnered with, and again, the challenge was that our match process is complex. We look at all sorts of information. We look at the a big or a mentor's willingness to work with someone who might be from a traumatic background, or if if they're looking for a particular age, or if they're what their interests are. And generally, our staff have to look through pages and pages of interview notes and assessment notes, and they could be 4 to 5 to 7 to 8 pages, and that takes a lot of time. And so we partnered with Microsoft and KPMG to build this AI match recommendation engine. And essentially, what it does is just like what I said, I combed all of my emails, sort of went through all the assessments, pulled out the pertinent information, and the same thing for the prospective mentee, the little, and recommends the top matches for the staff member. So rather than the staff member having to go through all of that information, they are now able to look at a list of recommended matches, and each one has a score. So they're able to look and see, and they always can go in and look at the detail and validate that that's a good one. But that process is saving our staff time and allowing them to match faster, allowing kids like Miles to get off the wait list faster. And again, allowing us to increase our impact. And so that is an example of how we brought AI into the very core mission that, our the very core of our mission.
I absolutely love that. And from what I recall, you had some hesitant staff members who were worried that the AI would not make as good matches as the staff would make. So talk a little bit about that. How did you bring along hesitant staff members? And does the AI make as good of matches as your team did when they were doing it manually?
Well, yeah, that was definitely one of the concerns. The other concern was, we're in the relationship business. So just the idea of AI, or even just a computer getting it, something that's non-human, getting involved in the match process created a lot of concern for the staff. And so what we did was from the very beginning, brought them along, like they were a part of the development. We started out with really trying to understand at least when I was talking to our partners, I said, we have people who are not technology adventurous. They are not necessarily people who are going to embrace this. We want to make sure that for those who are tech averse, they have a thumbprint on the final product. And so it was important to bring them in at the beginning, and really every step of the way, we had staff members involved, and they participated, they provided feedback, and then validation of the matches. It still happens today where they can still go in and look. And if they say, oh, there might be some, like, sometimes do they make matches so the matches, it makes recommendations. And the staff members choose from those recommendations the ones that they would select, and all of them have a score. And so far, so good. So far, there might be little small things like things that aren't included in any of our filters or that they just might know that, but they didn't write down from talking to the person. So those are always elements that will, that refine it, but it still results in, at the end of the day, saving time.
I would imagine saving significant amounts of time. And it's the same thing with writing, with ChatGPT. It spits something out. You still have to edit it, check it, review it. And the same thing goes for matches. So it's not that there's no human element at all, but it gives you a huge head start.
Huge head start. And, I think, again, I'll go back to what we're going to see pretty soon. I would imagine, I'm already seeing it in myself, is like, I am much more productive than I was before. And when you see that with a group of people who are using AI and those that they're not, it's going to leave some people behind, and it's going to be hard to catch up too. So again, this is why I really believe it's important for us as an organization to embrace it in a responsible way, but also for our staff members to be skilled so that if they ever leave, and we know that one day they will, they're prepared. We also do it with our youth, quite frankly. I believe our families, our youth, I want to make sure that all of them are future ready as well. So we're bringing it in to one of our match activities is we're partnering with code.org to sort of have this hour of AI for all of our matches and their families to really learn about and get comfortable with AI so that they're not afraid of it.
I love that. All right, so I want to tell you a story. I heard you speak in April, and I ran back to the office and I said, oh my gosh, we can use the example that you gave of how you match your bigs and your littles for us to match clients with consultants or advisors, as we call them. And we put in a system, it used to take us hours and hours to talk through who would be a good match, who has the right skills, who has the experience, looking back at all the personality characters and traits and what they love to do and who we thought would be a good match. And it took us many conversations to match consultants with clients. And we put into place the same system based on your story at that conference.
Wow.
And
That's so
now, what used to take hours takes, we still talk about and the matches. And you're right. It recommends the top 3. And so then we can have a conversation, a thoughtful conversation from there. Why did AI pick these people on our team to be matched with this particular client? And I have to say, it often picks up things that we wouldn't have thought about. And it sparks a whole different conversation, which has been really transformative in how we match consultants with clients here at Capital Campaign Pro.
I love that. And I will say too that one of the things that I knew and, this tool helped us to validate is that sometimes we have our own biases, right? And when it moves to something that's much more objective, it definitely allows for more conversations and exploration around the biases. And I think it hopefully will give our team a little more confidence to, really stand behind their recommendations. And so you're right. I'm glad that was helpful.
Oh, so helpful. All right. So before we hit record just a little while ago, you told me that you heard about something that blew your mind this week. So I can't wait. I'm on the edge of my seat. What blew your mind?
Okay, hold on. This is not something that someone told me. This is something that I did. So I told you I have an open position. And so because of the job market, we've gotten lots of very qualified candidates. And so my process was going to be, okay, we have the candidates, eliminate those that are disqualified because they're not at all qualified. And the remaining, there's a fair number of them. So I created a screener, and I was going to give different members of this team the resumes and the cover letters to screen based on this rubric, right? And one person was a board member. He wanted to be involved. So I wanted to make sure we had a screener that included all of the things that I thought were important. Well, I sent the screener off to the staff members. And then I said to myself, I wonder what would happen if, and we have an enterprise version of ChatGPT and Copilot, by the way. I said, I wonder what would happen if I had if I had ChatGPT do the screening. And so I put in all the resumes, I put the screener in.
What is the screener? I don't
So I
understand what
developed
that is.
so
Okay.
I developed basically a scoring sheet for each
Okay.
resume to determine if we were going to invite them in for an in-person interview.
Got it.
That
Okay.
was
So a
essentially
set
what it
of
was.
criteria, a
A
rubric.
set of criteria, and it was a rubric, and it included everything from, their experience, their connection to our mission, their, all sorts of things. Did they meet all of the criteria? And also the nice to haves as well. So they got points for extra nice to haves. Like, I like people to have a cover letter that is, that says something about why they want the role. So it evaluated the cover letter as well.
Great.
So I had about, let's say, 25 candidates. I put the candidates in ChatGPT, put the screener in ChatGPT. In 2 minutes, I had a scoring sheet, a ranking of every single candidate with their scores based on the rubric that I provided, just like that. Stack ranked with highlights and strengths and weaknesses.
Oh my gosh.
It was mind-blowing. I couldn't believe it. And I went back and I checked, and I was like, whoa. And I know there's fatigue that sets in after you get to like candidate number 20. You're like, okay, candidate number 21. Okay, check. So there's this human fatigue that happens and bias that happens. You might not see every single thing. ChatGPT, or when you think about AI and its objectivity, it doesn't get tired. There's no bias. It's just objective based on what I looked at. So I went back and looked at every single one just to look at the top ones just to make sure. I was like, whoa, it was fantastic. 2 minutes. So I took out that whole step. I don't need to do that because I already have them scored. So now I know who we're inviting in for in-person. And I looked at some of the other ones and it didn't miss anything. And it probably did it better than I could.
That is incredible. I imagine
it was a game changer.
Yeah, that is a game changer. Okay. I want to know, there's constantly new tools coming out, and it can feel overwhelming, especially for people who aren't quite as excited about it as you are. So how do you decide which tools to try? Where do you look for new tools? And how do you weed out the bad ones? Talk us through a little bit about, if a listener is like, okay, I don't even know where to start. Right? I mean, so that might be different than where I started to go with the question. So ChatGPT, but with just being deluged with options, how do you weed through the mess?
I would say be really clear on what your problem you're trying to solve. There are a lot of tools, but I will say that many of them are based on OpenAI's ChatGPT. A lot of organizations just, will white label or license ChatGPT to monetize something that ChatGPT can do. So my first step, if somebody is just starting out, I would say become very, very familiar with ChatGPT. I think I probably have had, and I did ask actually, I think I've had like over 3,500 prompts. Like I'm a prompt expert. So it's what I've played around with a lot. So I know what ChatGPT can do and what it can't, and no one's going to charge me for something that I can get in ChatGPT. So that's sort of the first thing, is like understand ChatGPT really, really well, because it is very powerful, and a lot of what other people can white label and package up can be done in either ChatGPT or Copilot. So that's generally my first step. But if it is something that is a very specific use case, like, for example, wealth screening in fundraising, that there are companies, Gravity's one, there are companies that do that specifically. They might take proprietary information and then they will load that in and allow it to do something that ChatGPT couldn't do on its own. That kind of information, I think those are the kinds of things that are use case specific, where it does make sense to do it. The meeting, I told you about the meeting recording, that's also something that's use case specific. And there are services that do that. Canva, Adobe, those do graphic design pretty well and easier. They have a sort of user interface that makes it a little easier than, you can do the same thing in ChatGPT and in DALL-E, but you can do it easier in Canva and in Adobe. And Designer, Microsoft has a version of Designer as well. So I have to make sure, I would tell everyone, become familiar with ChatGPT and start out with something that you know really well. Like just play around with something you know really well. Use a consistent sort of framework. So I try to think about, making sure I'm clear on what I need. What role do I want the AI to play? What's the outcome? Or is there a tone that I want it to have? And then what's the expectation of the person? All of that context is so important in prompting. And so being really good at prompting is certainly something that is really, really helpful. But being clear on what it is you need, like what's the problem you're trying to solve, the clearer you can do that, the easier it'll be to determine what solution you might need.
Yeah, I think that's so helpful. So just to clarify, you talked about not paying for tools that you can get for free. However, if you're entering any sort of sensitive information, which we can talk about whether you should or shouldn't, into something like ChatGPT, there are paid versions that don't put your information back into the World Wide Web. Can you just talk a little bit about so people understand when they should be using a paid version versus a free version?
I am not a fan at all of anything free because with free, there's always some value you're exchanging and your data is the value. And so I don't use any free tools. I only use paid tools. So I only use the paid version of ChatGPT. I only use the paid version of Copilot. And I always use my data for training your models. So full stop. I don't do anything other than that. So everything I'm talking about is on the paid version of ChatGPT with everything unchecked. Do not use my data for any models. And also Copilot. And Copilot by design is enterprise, it's enterprise grade. So you only are using your data for internal information and it is protected. So full stop. Don't use any of the free tools.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, it's good. Although they're like DeepSeek, for example, I will use DeepSeek for something that I don't need to retain, or sometimes I use it for instead of search. If I want some very specific answers, I find DeepSeek is also pretty good. But I don't use it for anything proprietary, just general like questions that are, that are more detailed than what I might get from a search.
Amazing. This has been such an enlightening conversation. I learned so much from you, and I really appreciate you sharing your knowledge, your wisdom, your experience with our listeners. So thank you for joining us. Now, where can people find you? First on LinkedIn, and where should they look for your TED Talk?
Yeah, so on LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn, Alonda Williams, you can find me. I also have a TEDx that you can find on YouTube, and it's called The Ripple Effect of Mentoring, and it speaks to my why.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And thank you, listeners, for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining Amy and Andrea for today's All About Capital Campaigns. To learn more about them and their work with organizations like yours, visit capitalcampaignpro.com, where you'll find all the help you'll need for your campaign. And please subscribe, then rate and review us on your favorite podcasting platform. Thank you.